Today's show is brought to you by patrons as well as YouTube channel members. Thank you all for supporting independent, progressive media. Canadian officials are responding to President-elect Donald Trump's weird fixation with making Canada part of the United States. Starting with Ontario Premier Doug Ford, brother of the now deceased crack-smoking mayor Rob Ford. Remember that guy? He joked on Monday that, hey, instead of this weird idea of merging with the United States and becoming the 51st state or something, and losing their much better healthcare system than we have in the United States, Canada could instead purchase Alaska and Minnesota. It's kind of a counteroffer. Hey, we'll take those off your hands. We'll give you a good price for them. I mean, you don't want Minnesota anyway. I mean, they're all left wing. I mean, Governor's Tim Walz, obviously socialist, right? We'll take them off your hands, okay? And then you could focus on Florida and all the rest of the other states, right? That you actually care about. Now, obviously, it's a bit of a joke, but when you think about it, the whole idea of merging Canada with the United States, also a bit of a joke, and Canadians not laughing, okay? When a reporter asked Ford if he thought that Trump was joking, the Ontario leader gave the president that counteroffer. As I mentioned, Minnesota and Minneapolis at the same time, it's not realistic. How about we buy Alaska? Interesting. But he said, quote, it's not realistic. I know he likes making these comments and he likes joking around. I take that seriously. He may be joking, but on my watch, that will never, ever happen. Ever. Yeah, because you'd have our healthcare system, which is massively horrible and broken. Any Canadian will tell you that, like, oh my God, American healthcare. Oh, that's disastrous. No, we don't want that at all. So, and hey, I don't blame him. I don't like our healthcare system either. But look, hey, here's the thing, though. Yes, Trump might be joking, okay? Because at this point, you can't really tell if he's serious or not, or if he's joking, or if this is some sort of, mentally diseased outburst or dementia related. I have no idea. Okay, this is not a well person. But to me, it seems like maybe you shouldn't joke about it. Taking over another country, going to war with Denmark over Greenland and Panama, especially considering how we already have a military base in Greenland. So why would, it's strategically valuable. Yeah, we already have a military base there. We have military bases pretty much everywhere. So, come on. Why do we need to buy Greenland? Okay, or threaten Denmark? If you won't let us buy it, then we'll just take it. What? Wait, I thought you guys were supposed to be anti-war. No, what's funny about that is you got all these pro-MAGA right-wing chuds on Twitter/X that are like, no, you know what? Manifest destiny, bitch. Now we're gonna take Greenland. We're gonna take Panama. We're gonna invade Mexico, and we're gonna turn the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America. That's what we're gonna do. It's almost like these people were never really anti-war at all. Okay, really. Later that day, by the way, Ford went on CNN with Aaron Burnett and said that the counteroffer was also a joke. Yes, we kind of figured. And that he appreciates Trump's sense of humor. Ah, right. Sense of humor. Sure. But whether Trump was joking or not, you had these people, these right-wingers, MAGA chuds, actually taking this seriously. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, who just filed a bill to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Okay, that's literal legislation that our lawmakers are wasting time on. How How is that going to lower the price of eggs or the rents or, solve the housing crisis? How's it going to solve any of the economic problems that you guys ran on? It won't. It won't. And by the way, there was a meeting between Trump and Biden at the White House, right? Where Trump was basically like, "Oh, hey, great job on the economy. Like seriously, you're handing me a pretty good economy." Okay. Now, again, I pointed out numerous issues. I don't agree that we have a great economy, but for Wall Street, they're doing fantastic. Stock market's doing pretty good. Rich people doing great. Okay. But there are a lot of problems for average everyday people. I know Trump ran on that and put, basically all the blame on Joe Biden, when in reality it's corporate greed. Now, Joe Biden and Congress could, actually do something to fight against that, do more than what they had been doing. But there's only so much you can do when these corporate interests control the vast majority of our politics, including many of our politicians. So that said, Trump's like, thanks for handing me a great economy. This is going to be awesome. Then I'm just going to take credit for all this and not do a damn thing. Oh, great. Lovely. Again, they never had a plan to do any of the stuff that they talked about. Okay. Their plan is to pass massive tax cuts for the rich. And then that's it. Profit. Yeah. Yeah. Now, getting back to Ford, obviously he's a conservative, okay? And so, of course, he's going to agree with Donald Trump on things like, oh, yes, we should secure the border between, our two countries. And then, of course, agreed with Canada's contribution to NATO. Now, I don't have an issue with member countries paying more to NATO, not paying their fair share, things like that, leaving the United States to pay for a lot of that stuff. So yeah, got us there. All right. That said, securing the border between the US and Canada, what for? Is there an issue where there's a lot of Canadians coming over illegally to the United States? No. Once again, our healthcare system is a disaster. You think they're going to come over here? No. In fact, you do have the opposite issue where you had a lot of Americans specifically coming over to buy milk and things like that in Canada and medication. Again, their healthcare system's better. So I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things where, oh yeah, no, Trump, I agree. We should definitely increase the border, between our two countries. We should secure it so you keep those pesky Americans out. Keep them out of Canada. And not only that, but also keep Americans in. Okay, not good. Then, of course, he talked about the issue of tariffs. Donald Trump has threatened a 25% tariff on our biggest trading partner. That's insane. Now, Ford brought that up. He said, Canada does $1.3 trillion of trade with the U.S. We're their largest trading partner. We ship down 4.3 million barrels of oil every single day. We send electricity down to the U.S., critical minerals. These are all areas in different sectors that Americans need. Why disrupt that? Because Donald Trump's an idiot. Okay? He's not very smart. Now, that said, that's Ford, right? Who's trying to make deals, by the way. Okay, he's like, oh yeah, no, let's make an energy deal so we can avoid these tariffs, right? Again, tariffs, they don't hurt the country. They hurt the consumers in America, but that also will harm trade. Okay, I have no problem with using the threat of tariffs if there actually is unfair trade practices that are going on, right? Sure, no problem using that as a negotiating tactic. But what we're seeing from Donald Trump is just throwing it around everywhere. And it doesn't really make any sense, all right, the way that he's doing these things. But again, not just Doug Ford, okay? You have outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who also, pushed back on this. on a post on X. He said, "There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States." All right, but you say, who cares? He's out the door anyway. It's just liberal Justin Trudeau. Okay, but you have the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, who also wrote in a post, "Canada will never be the 51st state, period." So, I don't know. Seems like now a lot of Canadians, especially Canadian leaders, are like, this is a really stupid idea. Please stop. All right, Trump, stop, please. Okay, don't do it. Don't even talk about this stuff. It's ridiculous. But like, here's the thing. Poilievre is a conservative, right? As I mentioned before. That guy could be the next prime minister of Canada. Okay? And I just got to address how it's because of the failure of the Liberal Party. Okay? And there's a failure of liberalism, okay? Their failure to contend with fascism, which is the merging of corporation and state. What do you think that, what do you think Elon Musk and his Doge Commission are all about? Okay? He's got so many conflicts of interest, and yet he is going to be making decisions on what to cut, what to have the government cut. Okay, this is the merging of corporation and state. He should not be in any sort of advisory role, taking so much money in government contracts. Okay, fascism, corporation and state. All right, and then there's the nationalism, which again you see this from MAGA. So that's why I call them fascists. All right. I'm not saying that they're the Nazi party and that they're, killing millions of people like the Nazi party did, but they are fascists and they are wannabe authoritarians. All right. You see that. But the failure of liberalism to actually effectively fight against it is kind of why we're in this mess in the first place. In America, the inability to, the United States to enact healthcare reform. Okay, to actually give healthcare to people. I know 32 out of the 33 countries that are modern OECD countries, they figured it out, but apparently it's too hard for us in America. No, it's not. It's because it's too hard. It's because we're too corrupt. All right. Then failure to raise the minimum wage. All right. And by the way, it was a Democrat that prevented that. Two of them, at least one was a former Democrat. Independent Joe Manchin, as well as Kirsten Sinema, with their famous thumbs down, stopping the minimum wage, a $15 minimum wage, which is not enough. Wasn't enough back then. It's not enough now. Doesn't matter. It got crushed. The inability for the Democratic Party to take on greedy corporate interests and end the corruption. This is why we have people like Donald Trump, demagogues, liars, who come in and promise all this stuff. And then, of course, they're not going to deliver. They're going to deliver public money into their pockets. That's what's going to happen. I mean, and not only that, but you look at the fact that the liberals do not have the ability to push a coherent message against the right wing and their massive army of billionaire-backed think tanks. It's one of the reasons they were able to take power, because they were able to spread their message everywhere. And it's a message filled with lies, half-truths, and conspiracy theories, but by God are they effective at getting their message out there. And the liberals had nothing to be able to counteract that. In a lot of cases, they're like, oh, yeah, no, we agree on things like the immigration. Oh, yeah, too much illegal immigration. Biden was a deporter in chief. So was Obama. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Liberals have been pretty feckless in leadership. Yeah, sure, they fixed some things around the edges. All right. Yeah, good. I mean, there's some accomplishments in capping, the cost of insulin. Things like that. I don't discount any of that, right? But fixing stuff around the edges doesn't actually fix the fundamental flaws with our healthcare system, with housing, with poverty, with homelessness. Those require big, and the climate. I mean, right now, California is on fire. They didn't fix any of these things, the underlying issues, okay? Homelessness. And when challenged with these failures from the left, liberal leadership tends to go right wing, blaming the left, blaming the immigrants, blaming the wokeness, because at the end of the day, they don't want to piss off their corporate donors. And the thing is, Canada is still to the left of the United States on a lot of their policies, okay? But they've had their own issues with their politics going right, just like the rest of the world, okay? The rest of the world has seen a right-wing shift, and it's going to get worse as global capital keeps flowing to the top. Climate change renders places uninhabitable, which causes mass migration. Price increases for everyday things will continue, and eventually, wars for resources. Things are going to get far worse before they get better. And that is a very, very depressing fact. Republicans on the North Carolina Supreme Court are pulling off a coup by blocking certification of the incumbent Democratic Justice Allison Riggs, who won her election by several hundred votes. Over 5.5 million people voted in that election, and after 2 recounts, Riggs still leads by 734 votes. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's 700, 7,000, or 7 votes. She won. She won. Now, that said, Griffin, her challenger, who also happens to be a judge on the State Court of Appeals, has been contesting the results for weeks. Now, look, when it comes to recounts in close races, you absolutely have a right to ask for a recount. I got no problem with that. No problem there. That said, there's already been 2 recounts, and he's still challenging the results. Wait, hold on. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's not about the voters. It is about the attempt to seize power. The North Carolina State Board of Elections had moved the case to federal court, but thanks to U.S. District Judge Richard E. Myers II, an appointee of Donald Trump, shocker, decided to send this case back to the state judicial system on Monday. Now, that judicial system, the state, is now attempting to just hand the position over to the Republican that lost. Although the board notified the North Carolina Supreme Court that it intended to appeal Myers' decision, and it did so later on Tuesday, 4 of the 5 Republican justices still granted the temporary stay and wrote in their order that in the absence of a stay from a federal court, this matter should be addressed expeditiously because it concerns certification of an election. Now, here's the thing. Riggs is on that court, but obviously she had to recuse herself from this. She did not participate because of her involvement in the case. But that said, it kind of left it the court, court's only other Democrat, Justice Anita Earls, to pen one of the dissents. She argued that Griffin's motion is procedurally improper and that even if it were not, his request should be denied because he has failed to meet the standard for granting preliminary relief. Remember, his relief is just throw out enough votes and give me the position already. I won. No, he didn't. he lost, and now he's attempting to have legal votes thrown out so that he can be handed this position. Now, in her dissent, Earls writes, Griffin seeks to retroactively rewrite the rules of the election to tilt the playing field in his favor. His filings amount to a broadside legal attack, raising a laundry list of statutory and constitutional objections to long-established election laws. She also calls out this as basically a fact-free post-election gamesmanship, is an example of that. Now, that said, Earls, the only Democrat on the board, was not alone in her dissent. You had another Republican, Justice Richard Dietz, who dissented, citing our state's corollary to a federal election doctrine known as the Purcell Principle, and warning that permitting post-election litigation that seeks to rewrite our state's election rules and, as a result, remove the right to vote in an election from people who already lawfully voted under the existing rules invites incredible mischief. Look, I got to give credit to Dietz for actually standing up for the voters in this case. There are Republicans who actually care about respecting the results of an election and actually democracy. But those Republicans are few and far between. Fortunately, the majority is now Trumpist. And they believe in seizing power and then justifying it with allegations of voter fraud or conspiracy theories. And there is a specific reason that they are focused on this case. As Ari Berman, Mother Jones National Voting Rights Correspondent, explains, Riggs' victory could give Democrats a shot at retaking the court's majority after 2028. That would allow them to oversee the state's redistricting process in 2031. Now who's talking long game? That's particularly consequential because the current majority and the court upheld heavily gerrymandered maps drawn by the Republican-controlled state legislature that allowed Republicans to pick up 3 U.S. House seats in November. Just enough to maintain control of the chamber and ensure the one-party rule in D.C. And there it is. And there it is. Now, I love how Republicans have been projecting about all this, about elections, about, Democrats, they want to shut down all the opposition. Yes, that's right. They want to rig the rules. They want to silence us. They want one-party rule. That's it. No, they're accusing the other side of doing the very things that they are doing right now. They're attempting to disenfranchise 60,000 legal votes. Okay? That's it. Legal voters. In fact, the News and Observer reported Tuesday that the vast list of challenged voters ensnared people from assistants to state lawmakers to Riggs's own parents. I mean, imagine that. A News and Observer analysis of the challenges found that black voters were twice as likely to have their votes challenged as white voters. Oh, wow. Seems like this could be another case of
the Republican Party's racist.
Big shocker, attempting to disenfranchise black voters. Because of course. Now, the challenge that affected the largest number of voters was Griffin's argument that the voters who did not have a driver's license number or a social security number on file should not have been allowed to vote. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have those things, but it might not be on file. You might not have the paperwork. A lot of people do not drive. Think of someone who is elderly, who doesn't need a driver's license anymore, can't really drive, lives in the city, doesn't have enough money for a car, takes public transportation. Yeah, why would they have a license? And again, getting back to some of those very elderly people, they might not have their social security cards, their paperwork. Oh, but you could go and get that, right? Well, that takes time and money to get. Okay? It's true. Griffin argues, though, this could lead to ineligible voters being able to cast a ballot. Oh, yes, of course. Because this country has so many instances of that, right? No. The fraud rate is infinitesimally small. Okay? It's a freaking blip. All right? 0.00001% of all votes cast nationally are fraudulent. Okay? But that's the thing. That's the game that they're playing. They lie about it. They inflate this because they inflate every supposed threat, right? I mean, talking about trans people and kids on puberty blockers, right? There's 1,000 in this entire country. He was citing, he is in Matt Walsh, was out there talking about how, there's millions and millions of children that are currently on these terrible puberty blockers and hormones. Oh, my dangerous hormones. Yeah, there's 1,000 total in the entire country. They just make things up. And they do it to justify their policies. In this case, trying to justify theft of an election. And if they failed to do that, by the way, which, again, they did in North Carolina. Remember, Mark Robinson was running to be governor of North Carolina. He lost to Josh Stein. Yeah, I know. Imagine that. The guy who called himself a black Nazi lost. But it doesn't matter. Josh Stein becomes governor, and then the Republican supermajority decides, you know what we're going to do? We're going to strip powers away from Stein. We're going to strip the power from the governor. And the same thing had happened in Michigan years ago. Okay? When Republicans lose, they first accuse the other side of cheating. And then, when they can't prove it, they strip the winners of any powers that the other side will gain. And we're supposed to believe that these people are the patriots? And that they're the victims of some vast conspiracy? No. Come on. Look, Riggs won that election fair and square. They got the recounts, and it was a close election. Try again next time. Okay? Try again next time. But unfortunately, Republicans, they can't let it go. And that's what the Republican Party has turned into now. Anti-democratic authoritarians who, in their pursuit of ultimate power, will disenfranchise anyone who doesn't vote their way. The Biden Justice Department has announced on Tuesday that it is suing several large landlords for allegedly colluding to keep Americans' rents high. Now, this comes as renters continue to struggle with higher costs for renting, as well as incomes that can't really keep up. By using both an algorithm to help set rents and privately sharing sensitive information with competitors to boost their profits, these companies had been essentially ripping people off. Okay. Now, the latest figures show that half of American renters spent more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities in 2022, which is an all-time high. So this has major results, and you wonder why people are very angry with the status quo, why Gen Z is miserable and has no hope. Okay, this is why they can't afford rent, much less their groceries, the healthcare. This is why the families with children are facing the highest eviction rates, with 1.5 million evicted each year, according to Princeton University's eviction lab. Where do they go? Sometimes they're lucky enough to stay with family members. Sometimes they end up on the street, where, in some cases, or a lot of cases, especially now, they get arrested for public camping. And you look at that and you wonder, why even have children? Okay, why even have, hey, Republicans always tell us, yeah, can't feed them, don't breed them, right? Okay, well, a lot of younger people are saying, well, I can't afford them, so I guess I'm not going to have them. And these same Republicans are now screaming about, oh my God, nobody's having families anymore. Destruction of the family. Well, you know what has destroyed families? Capitalism. That's what's destroying families in this country. The inability for people, for families, to afford anything, to afford a place to live. And again, it's because of these companies that are illegally colluding. The issue here, okay, with not being able to afford rent is not because you're eating too much avocado toast or having too many lattes. No, no, it's because of stuff like this. Okay, and wages that can't keep up. Now, look, housing. Obviously, there's a lot of different issues with the price of housing. Can't blame it all on the collusion, right? But this is a part of it. But there are supply issues, right? You got these investors, these big corporations, many that are foreign, multinational, and I've got some details on that. On one of the companies involved here. But these investors have been buying up single-family homes and putting them up for rent for years, and they'll go and they'll undercut regular, family buyers with these all-cash offers. And so, yeah, the bank will take that. But, sellers will take that and be like, oh, yeah, of course I'll take this cash offer, sometimes above market value. And then, of course, what does that do? When they, buy these homes and they put them up all for rent, drives up home prices for one, because it, reduces supply. And then you've got less supply and you've got these unscrupulous giant corporations that are just raising the rents. It's a disastrous situation. Okay. And look, there's also a lack of new homes that get built. There does need to be new homes that are built. But of course, you also got to prevent them from being bought up by these same companies. And there's also lack of affordable housing because you have a lot of people that are like, not in my backyard. So there's a lot of different issues, right? But for this, the Department of Justice has been focused on these landlords, these 6 major landlords that have been using AI algorithms and have been colluding to set these rent prices higher. The department, along with 10 states, including North Carolina, Tennessee, Colorado, and California, are accusing 6 landlords that collectively operate more than 1.3 million units in 43 states and the District of Columbia of scheming to avoid lowering the rents or just raising the rents. Now, one of them happens to be Greystar Real Estate Partners, LLC. Okay, this is a multinational firm, all right, not just an American company. Now, Greystar is the largest apartment manager in the United States with over 726,826 units as of 2023. They have assets worth around $76 billion spread across 17 countries. Yeah. Now, they put out a statement in their website, of course, saying Greystar has and will conduct its business with the utmost integrity. At no time did Greystar engage in any anti-competitive practices. We will vigorously defend ourselves in this lawsuit. Right. Now, Greystar, the reason I read their statement here is because of how hilarious it is, okay, that this company has, is saying like that. We utmost integrity, when they've had some issues, okay? In 2019, for example, Greystar was sued for violating consumer protection law. Yeah. How so? And for what? Greystar was charged with gathering extensive personal identifying information about tenants without knowledge or consent. This was filed in a Los Angeles County Superior Court. Okay. At 5 Greystar-owned apartment buildings, the company collected information about its tenants' character and general reputation. Why were they collecting this information? Don't know. Not good. Not good. Maybe selling it to third parties even. Maybe talking to other apartment complexes, other apartment owners and saying, well, don't rent to that person. Their character is not good. Their reputation is bad. Now, there's more. In June of 2019, the company was sued for negligence. That's right. A crane had collapsed on the apartments owned by Greystar in Old East Dallas, causing serious injury to numerous tenants and the death of a woman. This company was required to pay about $860 million in damages to 17 plaintiffs, including the parents of the deceased woman, for violating safety regulations. Apparently, they put a Greystar sign on top of the crane for some reason. It doesn't make any sense why they would do that. That's just one of the violations. Now, in 2022, a tenant at a Greystar property in Charlotte, North Carolina, filed a lawsuit against the company, alleging that they had failed to perform necessary building maintenance. So there's some slumlord activity here. And then in January 2024, a tenant at the Greystar property in Lakewood, Colorado, had sued Greystar over some junk fees that the company added to her monthly rent. That same month, Greystar charged a Loveland, Colorado family $4,140 in lease-breaking penalty fees following the death of the lease's primary signer. So wait, the guy who signed the person who signed the lease dies, and they're like, we're going to charge you over $4,000 for breaking that lease. How dare you die? What the hell? All right. And by the way, that's just one of the companies in this lawsuit. The other is RealPage, right? One of the others, I should say, that worked with all of these different companies. Now, RealPage is not a rental company, okay? They don't run any properties, but they do run an algorithm that recommends rental prices to landlords. They were sued, okay, along Greystar and the other, 5 other companies. Prosecutors said the algorithm used sensitive competitive information, which allowed landlords to align prices and avoid competition that would otherwise push down rents. Instead, they made it go the other way. The lawsuit accuses the landlords of sharing sensitive data on rent and occupancy with competing firms via email, phone calls, or in groups. The information shared allegedly included renewal rates, how often they accept an algorithm's price recommendation, the use of concessions such as offering a month free, and even their approach to pricing for the next quarter. So, wow, massively anti-competitive behavior. Colluding to profiting off an already massively inflated housing market and rental market is absolutely disgusting. You know, people have to have a place to live. It's non-negotiable. You have to live somewhere, okay? And if you cannot buy, which in many places, especially cities, you're priced out, mainly because, housing costs are so high, down payments are so high, that because of the supply issue, the other issues that I mentioned earlier in the video, right? So you can't buy a house. Okay, well, maybe you can rent it. Oh, sorry, these companies have been jacking up the rent. And, hey, if you have credit issues, well, then you're going to have a real problem with being able to, afford to rent this place. And then you've got the first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, all that stuff. And they're charging you all these extra stuff, plus your junk fees and all that, while at the same time colluding behind the scenes with each other to keep the rents high. And if you can't afford these exorbitant prices, then, well, the government's not really going to help you. The voucher programs that do exist have sometimes years-long waiting lists, okay? And unfortunately, municipal governments, local state governments have invested a lot more money into police than they have in making sure that people can afford to, or are able to get some help to be able to afford the rent. So, and by the way, they invest in these police forces, which has the effect of going after homeless people. Homeless people get incarcerated and end up being used as prison labor for corporations. Yeah, it's essentially a slave labor force, because guess what? Slave labor is legal if you go through the prison system in this country. So that's the reality that we're living in now. Dystopia isn't coming. It's already here. It already exists. Now, that said, the Justice Department has said that one of the 6 landlords has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, and a proposed settlement would restrict how the company could use their competitors' data and algorithms to set rents. So that's one of these companies. There's plenty more who are actually planning to fight against this lawsuit. I hope they're not successful. I hope the DOJ. Look, I don't have a lot of hope for this continuing under Trump, this case. But if it does, I hope they win. That'd be a hell of a win for the Trump administration. In their Department of Justice, if they continue this case and actually get a huge win from these companies. Because it's obvious that more needs to be done. Everybody knows that this is a problem. And it's one of the big reasons, one of the many economic reasons that people took a chance on Donald Trump. So everybody knows it needs to get done, that we need to hold these companies accountable. And there's plenty more to do. But at least, hey, it's a start. And hopefully Trump administration continues this case. Back in 2016, the Loan Institute created something called the Shkreli Awards, named after the pharma bro Martin Shkreli. If you don't remember who he was, he's a guy who hiked the price of Daraprim. It's a decades-old medication. He took the price from $13.50 a pill to $750 a pill. That's a 5,000% increase. This is a move that even Donald Trump at the time criticized. Okay. Now, the guy ended up being shady and going to prison, right? But is still held up as the poster child for healthcare greed. So now this think tank out of Massachusetts called the Loan Institute has been ever since running the Shkreli Awards. And they've announced their winners for 2024. They're winners. Okay. And look, once I go through them, you'll see why. So we're going to start at number 10 here, which is the University of North Texas's Health Science Center, who basically dissected and distributed unclaimed bodies without properly seeking consent from the deceased, which obviously you can't, or their families, unless they're, sign an agreement ahead of time. But no, none of that. None of that. Okay, so no consent from them prior to their death or from their families afterwards. So just taking these parts and, well, I mean, that's worse, right? So they supplied the body parts to medical students as well as major for-profit ventures like Medtronic and Johnson & Johnson. So, I mean, that is really super messed up. All right. No wonder they're on the list, but they're actually 10th on the list. Number 9 are apparently groups that do baby tongue tie cutting procedures. Okay. That are being touted as a cure for everything from breastfeeding difficulties to sleep apnea, scoliosis, and even constipation, despite any conclusive evidence that the procedure happens to be effective. So there are apparently people that are saying, let's cut the tongues of babies as a cure-all. What? Really messed up. That's number 9. Number 8 is Zynex Medical. Now, that's a company that's facing scrutiny for billing practices related to some nerve stimulation devices used for pain management. So, yeah, there's some issues there. There's number 7 is insurance giant Cigna. They're under fire for billing a family nearly $100,000 for an infant medevac flight. So, I mean, that's one of the huge issues with our healthcare in this country. Take a medevac, massive amounts of money. And then, hell, take an ambulance. That's $3,000 at least. So, like, that's why a lot of people in this country are like, I better be dying, okay? If you call me an ambulance, I better be, like, on my deathbed, all right? Because I cannot afford a Wii U wagon, all right? I can't do it. It's too much money. And so, if I can, I will drive myself to the hospital. I'm pretty sure, some of my overseas viewers, Canadian viewers, European viewers, you guys are like, oh my God, y'all are barbarians. What are you doing here in America? It's horrifying. Daily life. I mean, after all, these are the Shkreli Awards for a reason. Okay. Now, let's go to number 6. 7 suppliers allegedly ran a multi-billion-dollar urinary catheter billing scam that affected hundreds of thousands of Medicare patients. So scamming Medicare is, hey man, that is something that has happened plenty of times before. In fact, you had former, well, now Senator Rick Scott, who perpetrated Medicare fraud, the largest in Florida's history, apparently. So yeah, got away with it too. Memorial Medical Center, this is number 5 in Las Cruces, New Mexico, allegedly refused cancer treatment to patients or demanding upfront payments, even from those with insurance. Now imagine getting the worst news that you could ever get. Hey, you know, you've got cancer, right? That'll be $20,000. What? What are you talking about? What, $20,000? I don't have $20,000. Well, sad day for you, I guess. You can go die then. I mean, that's our system. Number 4 is Dr. Thomas C. Weiner, who's a Montana oncologist who allegedly subjected a patient to, and it's funny because, you know, it's not funny, but previously, you know, the number 5 was, oh, this place was just refusing to do cancer treatments unless you pay up front, right? Dr. Weiner apparently subjected a patient to unnecessary cancer treatments for over a decade. So not only is it super costly, but I mean, things like chemotherapy and radiation are just horrific to have to go through, damaging for the body. Okay? And so this guy, I mean, terrible. Now, apparently he provided disturbingly high doses of barbiturates to facilitate death in seriously ill patients when those patients may not have actually been close to death. Wow. And then prescribed high doses of opioids to patients that actually did not need them. Massive amounts of problems there. Weiner denies any wrongdoing here. So this is all alleged, obviously. But nonetheless, if it happens to be true, yeah, definitely belongs on this list. Then on number 3, you've got pharma giant Amgen, who was accused of pushing 960 milligram doses of its highly toxic cancer drug, Lamacris, when a lower 240 milligram dose offers similar efficacy with reduced toxicity, but costs $180,000 less per patient annually at the lower dose. So that is all about trying to make much more money pushing a drug that at a dose that they don't need. Now you're not going to be surprised who's at number 2, and that's United Health. Of course, they allegedly exploited its vast physicians network to maximize profit, often at the expense of patients and clinicians, including by pressuring doctors to reduce time with patients and to practice aggressive medical coding tactics that make patients seem as sick as possible. So that's your upcoding, right? In order to earn higher reimbursements from the federal government. So that was one of the things I had previously talked about with my Luigi Mangione and United Healthcare coverage before. And so, yeah, absolutely disgusting and not surprising. But look, that's number 2. Number 1 happens to be Steward Healthcare CEO Dr. Ralph Della Torre, who is accused of orchestrating a dramatic healthcare debacle by prioritizing private equity profits over patient care amid debt and sale leaseback schemes and a bankruptcy that left hospitals gutted, employees laid off, and communities underserved, as he reportedly walked away with more than $250 million over a period of 4 years as their hospitals tanked. Wow. So that's the worst of 2024, according to this list. Now, Dr. V. Kasani, who is the Loan Institute president, said during the award ceremony, quote, "All these stories paint a picture of a healthcare industry in desperate need of transformation. Doing these awards every year shows us that this is nothing new. We're hoping that these stories illuminate what changes are needed." So that's the whole point of this, right? That said, I mean, the idea that healthcare in this country is broken is, I think, a pretty open secret. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Except apparently politicians, the media, okay? And what I'm talking about are the elites, right? That continue to defend our privatized healthcare system and to push back against efforts to, have Medicare for all, okay? And I remember the segments on CNN. I remember the Washington Post op-eds that attacked Bernie Sanders and the idea of, hey, why don't we expand Medicare to everybody and guarantee that every man, woman, and child has health care in this country? I remember that. I remember Hillary Clinton telling us that we will never, ever have single-payer health care in this country. As if the other 32 countries that do have it are somehow doing healthcare wrong, and we're the only ones that are doing it right. Really? 68,000 people die a year from lack of healthcare. You sure we're doing it right? We spend the most money, have the worst outcomes. We have a lower life expectancy than a lot of these other countries. We have medical bankruptcy that shouldn't exist. And yet, here we are. Okay, here we are doing the Shkreli Awards. Insane. This, getting back to how this is an open secret, this is why there's so much sympathy for the alleged killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Okay, now Luigi Mangione has been charged with assassinating Thompson. He's pleaded not guilty, so all this is alleged, right? But nonetheless, there's a lot of people that are like, I approve, or I'm not mad about it. I'm not really feeling a lot of sympathy for Mr. Thompson. Okay, I mean, look, jury nullification is a possibility. A lot of people are talking about it. Okay, polling from NORC in December found that roughly 7 in 10 adults believe that profits or coverage denials by health insurance companies bear a great deal or a moderate amount of responsibility for the murder of Thompson, whoever did it. So, we do understand what the problem is. The only question is what we as a country and what our politicians are going to do to actually solve it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.